Today's topic will be all about multidimensional coherence. It's quite an important aspect of our experience as starseeds and our experience as just spiritual beings, no matter what kind of label or concept or approach you have, right? No matter what perspective you're coming at this from, even if you are a witch or a wizard, even if you are some other kind of spiritual practitioner, I think it's important to understand the spiritual and multidimensional perspective of the universe, a perspective of, having a spiritual experience itself. So it's really something that can help us understand how to make our reality creation a lot more effortless, if that makes sense. And it can also help us kind of have more of a practical approach to these. And what I mean by practical is by having a practice and by understanding how different practices in each aspect can really help us bring the whole together. Us as whole beings, that's one of the biggest I guess approaches that I take into my work as an energy practitioner. So as somebody who works with energy, right, somebody who works with also different spirits, I work with divine spirits, I work with extraterrestrials, I work with sometimes even departed loved ones, and ascended spirits. Like, that's my kind of thing, the ascended and the most pure sort of template of each spirit. Angelics, I really love the angelic energies of all kinds. There are many ranks of angels. In case you didn't know, there are different types of angels. I especially really love the archangelics and the seraphim and the guardian angels. So those are the types that I work with the most. And also different extraterrestrial consciousness, those that are of the purest light. Though I have faced also other kinds of extraterrestrials, and there is a video that is in the process of being made that I've actually filmed already, that will go a little bit more into how I perceive certain alien energies. I mean, it's mostly about psychic attacks, so I kind of go into that deep dive on mostly how personally I have experienced these different types of psychic attacks feeling in my energy field. And I do find that even like now, kind of as an afterthought, whenever you kind of do magical workings that either protect or cut cords, that also helps to kind of remove some of those more intense effects of, say, people, for example. But back to the topic, my main topic here was again about multidimensional coherence. And what I mean by this in this context, because I guess on some kind of a mental level, one could argue, if we wanted to go into the argument side of things and not just the hard experience, right? One could perceive the multidimensional experience as being maybe a different aspect of our energy bodies, for example. What I personally, I want to think about this as, okay, us having all of these different layers to our energy bodies is already a multidimensional experience. And that already shows us the awareness of having just more than what some might say 3D experience, what some might perceive as human experience, what some might express as materialized or physicalized experience. Because let's be real, it's not just material or physical, it's materialized and physicalized. That is the point. Because once that thing was a spirit, now it's materialized and physicalized. That is us as well. And that's just one of these dimensions of consciousness. It's just one part of the process. It's almost like, I suppose, I don't know, is it even the last one? I am not 100% sure, actually. What I believe, there might be even something more, something more than materialized and physicalized, that would be the last part of the process. We'll see where that exploration takes us. And I'll leave that question to you. You can explore it yourself as well, but that would be wonderful. And let me know in the comments when you do. But yeah, knowing that that's just one. And in this video that I was just kind of going through this audio track that I had recorded before, I was kind of going into this exploration of how many beings kind of think of the soul as being just one part of our energy bodies, which is not. Where also I have noticed sometimes the concept of being heart-centered or heart-based or heart awareness, heart-centered awareness is equated to, say, emotions, for example, or a certain ideology. In my experience, in my explorations, in my teaching, the heart-centered awareness is the source, it's the soul, it's all the deeper part of us, that divine unconditional love that is all of us, that we all are. That is heart-based, heart-centered consciousness. And our heart is kind of the high heart, is the center point, first of all manifestation. That is where we can go to our own individual, unique zero point experience. That is where we receive the source within us, where we can tap into our own soul fractal of the source, which at the same time is source, right? Sometimes these things don't seem to make that much logical sense, and that's exactly why the soul is not the mind either. And I was going into that in this audio recording that I was creating. The soul is not the mind, it is not the emotions, and it is not the body. But at the same time, it coexists with all of them, and it can be embodied. In order for the soul to be most effectively embodied, all of these other levels have to be like clear. They're gonna have to be balanced and harmonized and purified to the point in which they can actually come to coherence. And that's what we mean by multidimensional coherence. We bring everything into a nice harmonious coexistence, and we allow our entire energetic system to support us in our process. How do we do this? First of all, if you haven't done the practical and the, I suppose, more grounded and human ways of doing this, then this can be a bit harder and it might take longer. And I've had personal experiences to kind of back this up. First of all, I tried and I did, in fact, embody a lot of my multidimensional consciousness back in 2020. So there was a lot of that happening. And there was a lot of very highly cosmic experiences that I had. I also did channeling. I was still channeling. At some point, I kind of stopped just to see, okay, am I doing this the right way? Should I be doing it differently? And, I've been really pulled to go back to channeling, to be honest. It has been really drawing me in quite a lot. And it's not that I was doing it the like not right way, but I'm just gonna say right here, at that time there was a lot of intensity going on, and there was also a lot of intensity in the space that I was in. And I feel like there was a lot of mental level, incoherence, and there was also like a lot of ego adjustments to be done. I find that ego is almost like another piece of this puzzle that can be triggered by any of our other levels. So it isn't necessarily something that I would 100% tie into something. It can be thought of as psychological, but I feel like it can also be thought of as something that's very primal to just being a human. So therefore, I won't go into that topic right here, because that's kind of that's a part of this whole picture that many of us starseeds are already like we're on top of this, right? We're already aware that, okay, we got this ego thing going on, and that this ego might be here on the way of our sort of full potential, if it makes sense. We might be aware that our ego is the one that likes to cling to mental things, emotional things, even our body, stuff like that, right? Like some people, maybe they really identify with their body, or maybe like me, they don't identify much at all. And that's a part of how the ego is like the ego, yes, can be self-aware, but oftentimes it expresses itself in a very non-self-aware way. It's very defensive at times. Yeah, that defensiveness and this sort of the sort of way that our ego might sometimes get in the way of our multidimensional coherence has to be really, we really do need to be self-aware. And I mean self-aware in its truest way, beyond the ego, right? True self, the true soul awareness, and also the bigger picture, the sort of objective higher self awareness, I suppose. Higher self, the way that I perceive the higher self is it just a part of the multidimensional consciousness. It is not separate. It's something that we can embody. It's not a coaching, concept. It's not another being necessarily, but we can kind of see projections or visions of our higher self or our highest self. I'm thinking of the highest self as source, literally. That's just what I think of the highest self as. Which is funny. Like it's funny when I say it, but I really do believe that our highest self for each of us is the source. And the reason why I think about that is because the source, yes, is in all of us. That's unity consciousness, understanding others and ourselves as divine beings. And so when we have like a full objective self-awareness, we're going to be able to spot when the ego is trying to, maybe mess with the full multidimensional coherence that we have. And like I said, back in that situation, when I was trying to embody all of this higher multidimensional starseed consciousness into me, yes, I was having a lot of really wild experiences, like astral, situations. That was a very, yeah, very astral-y time. And a lot of that awareness was, yeah, it was downloading into my consciousness. But then there was just, I had to clean up a lot. I had to clean up like whole last year. And at this point, it's like there isn't that much to clean up anymore. I feel like the purification has taken me into a very balanced and mature and chill place. And I do find sometimes, I mean, this is just my sort of personal problem. Sometimes when I get like really stressed, I might, especially if I'm kind of feeling burnt out. That's kind of my personal issue that obviously I don't want any one of you to deal with. Um, I'm transmuting it as we speak. Look at that. That was wild. I can do like a blue light. Oh, that was really cool. Okay, well, let's move on. I think that was Mikhail, maybe. Who knows? Yeah, it was him. Just got a heart confirmation. I mean, stress is something that can very much be an issue for, say, allowing for that higher DNA activation to happen. That can be a bit more, challenging thing for us these days. And in these type of conversations, understand what stress is doing to your body consciousness. Your body has its own consciousness, yes, but it doesn't mean it's the soul. And it also doesn't necessarily mean it's the mind or emotions, but they can also affect our body. So be mindful of all of this, how these things work together, because kind of how like our thoughts can impact our emotions as well. That's why we also want to make sure that we are in good health in all of these aspects. Why mental health is, yes, important. I remind people at this point, I'm not a therapist. I will not try to be one. I'm not a psychologist. I will not try to be one. Okay. I am an energy worker. So when we talk about energy work and energy healing, stuff like that, we are talking about it from the perspective of working on your energy fields. That is what I do. That is what I do. That's what my transmissions help us all with, including myself, of course. It's to bring our energy fields into that, nice, unified presence. Energy fields in coherence. So let's say, for example, I were to do an energy field adjustment to your emotional body. That would be different than me doing therapy for you, because that would just be me, supporting you energetically in order to allow for your emotional fields to come into balance and to come into that higher experience and to transform and to flow right. Because sometimes when we do have these emotional blocks, for example, or if we have like other types of challenging experiences going on, we do need to know, first of all, how to take care of those on a grounded level. But the energetic has to be figured out as well, because these emotions do leave certain energetic, kind of like just an energetic kind of residue, if that makes sense, that is kind of left behind from that experience. And the same thing when we work with the mental levels, there can be different thought forms that come, different concepts, even egregores that can come from those situations and different things, so therefore, to do energetic work in order to clear the mental fields and to clear thought forms is very important. Now, some of you might be thinking, how the fuck do I manifest then? If it's not like, if I have to keep these things clear, doesn't that mean that also my manifestations will? No, because you are creating an experience, you are creating a reality. You are not creating a thought or an emotion. And here's one thing that you should know 100%. Like if you want to go that route, if you want to go the route of creating a thought form or creating an emotional form, once those experiences fade out, that manifestation may not stay solid. And I'm simply saying this because as humans, we are growing beings. And we will, like, let's say you're manifesting a job, but then once you're in that job, your sort of emotional and mental experience changes. And it doesn't match the vibration of what you had in mind before. So therefore, you would have to grow that somehow. Yes, like that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with growing things and having that be an evolving manifestation or evolving working. I think that is totally okay. But I find that when we start to instead think about the experience itself, and we start to think about it as just a frequency and as a way of being, which might also change. Let's be real. I'm gonna kind of call out my own perspective here as well. Like, if that starts to be a thing that happens, then yeah, we shift. But the thing is, we are not holding on to certain thoughts or certain emotions in order to keep an experience going, right? Do you see how liberating that is? It's very liberating. And I also find that with anything, it's important to physicalize it if we want a physical result. So therefore, that part goes into play as well. And there has to be coherence with all of this, right? And that's also one of these things is why sometimes affirmations don't work for people, is if on an emotional level they feel different compared to what they're sort of the mental part of the affirmation. So that's the spoken word, that's the mental programming and whatnot. Maybe I should make another video about programming, because that also I have thought about that. If we are kind of in a totally different emotional state compared to the affirmation, and let's say there is something that we actually do need to go to therapy for, which I won't do for you. Don't try. Please don't. Yeah, if we do need to go to a certain, deeper process in order to work on our own internal blocks, our own internal challenges that are either keeping us in emotional state, they're keeping maybe a thought form going, they're keeping an illness in our lives. I feel like in those situations, We do need to kind of go into the root of the problem first, and then see if those, I guess, affirmations and more surface level things can work. I'm not saying that hypnosis doesn't. I've actually had some pretty pleasant experiences with hypnosis. Because it's a psychological process, and it's a subconscious process. So those type of things do, I'd say they work for people, but I can't generalize this because we can't really do that, can we? Generalizations only work when you find the right person to generalize. Those type of tools, it's important that there is willingness. And I find that willingness, knowing your power, setting the most powerful intentions is one of the ways that shit starts happening actually, and reality starts shifting and molding very effortlessly and easily. That's when we embrace our true power, our true potential. And I do notice that the room is getting a bit dark over here because the sun is setting. This is quite cozy though, isn't it? Take a sip of water. All right, so where was I? I was talking about how these mental and emotional levels have to work together. Maybe I will make a whole video about the mental levels. I actually started on that already, which is what I would call the emotional and empathic fields and how they work. And I've done a lot of work on these throughout my entire life because I was born a very sensitive child. Uh, and the reason why it's making me laugh because this used to be such a personality defining characteristic for me, but then I realized that okay, all humans are very emotional, and who I am today, these days, is just not so, I would say, ruled by that experience. I kind of see myself as a whole being, and I don't think that being emotional is necessarily a personality defining character. I believe it's just a human quality and it's just a part of all of our experience. But I feel like a part of that was because just the way that I experience emotions is I just know there are so many subtle differences in that. And that I've always been very, like I said, sensitive and understanding of what these emotions are doing, etc. Like it's a long fucking topic. When we want to work on our emotional energetics, our emotional energy fields, it's very important that we also do that very grounded level work, that very deep work on our own, emotional and psychological wellness. That might be for some a part of their emotional energy field work. For me, I know that I get a lot of help from therapy. It really does help. Yeah, for some people it might not be the thing. Some people might prefer to like journal and stuff. And there are pros and cons to journaling. I might want to talk about that as well at some point. Um, but it's important that we are in an, I say, emotionally balanced state most of the time. I think that's really a good starting point for that emotional coherence with the rest of the energy bodies. But the key part, I'd say, like I've already went on a bit of a ramble about all of these other things, is understanding where the soul and the higher levels are coming from, where we might want to like adjust the rest of our consciousness, the rest of our energetics for when it comes to that. Because when we have the soul consciousness come into the body, it will the way I'm about to say it is kind of interesting, but it's gonna call out everything that's in incoherence with that soul experience and with that soul's desires and what that soul really wants for you and what the oversoul and your multidimensional aspects want for you. So there's going to be a bit of a call out, especially if you have been living completely opposite to those things, especially if you have been completely unaware of what your soul wants for you. I sometimes notice this in people. They're not really even aware that their soul is directing so much of their lives. But it really is, right? This is the most interesting phenomena that I see. Like a lot of people are having shifts in their lives that are being directed by their higher levels, by their souls, and yet they themselves act like they're not even awake in that way, or maybe they are, but they might not even be doing like that much of deep practice, right? So then it's like very interesting to witness this, and especially when there is so much like misconceptions about how that multidimensional experience comes to play here. And I want to really help people understand this, because I think it would really help people to yeah, come into that more holistic understanding and awareness of what the fully spiritual and whole experience is about, what that divine experience is about. I'd say that's a bit of an overview of multidimensional coherence, how to work with it. I've already made like a whole video about the mind and the mental levels, how that becomes kind of the higher mind. And that's kind of where the mind goes through this purification. Of course, stress, our emotional states affect our minds, and that's where the coherence has to be figured out. When it comes to body coherence, how our bodies are coherent with stuff, this is where we talk about, physical detox, for example, which I won't give too much advice on, because again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't really give too much advice for that. But what I would like, what's kind of universal advice is drink enough water, get good sleep, take walks, or just exercise, right? Whatever works for you. Yoga is a good recommendation for those who can do it, those who want to do it, because some people maybe don't want to do it. But I personally like yoga because it's kind of like it's a meditation, and like and it can be a spiritual practice also, but it kind of combines meditation and body awareness, physical body awareness, and stretching. So therefore it kind of does two or three jobs, or maybe even four jobs at the same time. That's kind of some basics of body awareness. I feel like just treating your body kindly, even to my transgender friends, I am one of those, if you didn't know. Body awareness, right? We sometimes have very complicated relationships with our bodies. We deserve human rights, and we can do whatever we want with our bodies, okay? But still, we can take care of our bodies well, no matter what we feel about it. And we can also have the bodies that we want as well. Okay, so we can have that. Like, here's the thing, that is coherence. If inside our identity, our the way we perceive ourselves as humans is completely different to what our body happens to be at that moment, I find that's a big incoherence between the physical and the sort of personal energy. Yeah, the self-awareness. To some extent, for some of us, it is also about the soul. Personally, I find that if you do have a lot of this starseed awareness in our souls, and then we find ourselves to be like transgender, that's I'd say that makes a lot of sense. It just makes a lot of sense to me, because we already feel very different from others, and as starseeds, um, we might not even feel that humans sometimes. Might be a bit different to be among humans. But that's kind of what I would say about that. And no wars in the comments about this, okay? No wars, because we have been mistreated enough. And having that in the spiritual community is very distressing, okay? It's not the love and light that, and peace and, health that all of these people are thinking that, they're pushing, right? If you're creating more distortion, you are not erasing it, okay? There is so much that I could go into. And I feel like this will be like a whole like I will make more videos about this, like more specific ones about different parts of this thing. We'll see where this conversation evolves, but this is just like a little overview of how to bring these energy fields into coherence. I think energy work, just doing work on the energy bodies themselves, doing work on the etheric field, and just quantum work, all of those things can really help us with our multidimensional energetic coherence in general. And the heart is at the center of all of it. Remember that the heart, your soul, the source, the 0 point cosmic heart consciousness is at the center of it all. That is what ties together this entire experience. And there's layers upon layers on this. Thank you for listening. I hope this gave you some food for thought. I will explore these topics from my own perspective. Of course, my perspective is unique to me. I mean, a lot of this I am talking from my own experience, so keep that in mind as well. My experience is my experience. Yours might be different, or somebody else's might be different. That's all that there is to this. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.